Hello everyone and welcome to rural Germany. In today's episode we are going to expand the town of Weissenburg. We are going to add tons of house blocks, and that is basically what this entire episode is about, residential expansions. And we are going to add an Edeka somewhere between those houses that has stayed in the town and not moved to the commercial district outside of the town. As we are starting to build our first block, you see this big building placed there where the two streets on the sides of this block meet. And this doesn't feel pretty typical for this town. And the reason this is here and the function that it has is after a few houses burned in that place and the houses couldn't be saved, so they had to be demolished. A rich investor bought the ground and placed a big office building there that is used for conferences and for usual tourists. You can imagine that the people of the town weren't happy, but then the rich investor compromised them by making the building look kind of like the old style. It's not completely fitting in, but it's also not a glass box, if you know what I mean, because that would be completely out of place in this town. And luckily he decided to not build a glass box or any big skyscraper, but just do it like this. Then another thing I want to say, in this video we repeat the same stuff a few times, like placing the houses, then placing fences to mark the gardens, then placing these chairs for outside and other small details to the garden like umbrellas, and then we put trees and grass in. To not make it too repetitive, sometimes I cut away one of these parts, usually not the trees, but usually I cut away, for example, the placing of chairs in the garden or detailing the concrete with mud, for example, because that is also something we do a lot of times. So just don't be confused if it seems like I forgot something, because I probably just cut it out to keep the pace in there. Otherwise it would get really boring. Okay, so now I'm laying out the roads for today's expansion, so you can kind of get a rough idea of how much we are going to expand. We will now detail this entire block here, and I'll be back in a minute. Alright, I hope that last block gave you a rough idea of how we are going to make this expansion. We are now continuing with the next block, and as you will see in this block, the further we get away from the city center, the more distance there will be between the houses, because in that last block we detailed, there was basically no room between the houses and they were all placed really close to each other. But in this block they will be slightly spread out and they won't be standing directly next to each other anymore. Maybe in some cases it will still happen, but mostly there will be space between the buildings, because obviously it still stays a rural town, and the further we get out of the city center, the less dense it will be. Here we are back with the brick decals to create this pedestrian street. This is just a continuation of the street I talked about in episode 1 of this city, so episode 15 of the series, which used to be the north-south street through the town back in the days. And because this block is again close to the city center, it will have the same houses that are really close to each other. After this little part of the street, that pedestrian street will turn back into a normal road though, because then we really get to the outskirts of the town, where back in the days there probably wouldn't even be any houses apart of some farms. Don't worry though, this is definitely not the only pedestrian street that we're going to make this episode, and in the entire town in general. And I know there's less voiceovers in this episode than in a regular episode, and that is because there isn't really anything to talk about, because it's just detailing houses and expanding the town. A really important feature of the city build, but I feel like I can't explain how I build the house blocks over and over again because it would be really repetitive, so I just decided to add more voiceless parts to this episode and add some relaxing music and talk at the parts where it's necessary. Here we are finally building that Edeka that I was talking about, the store where people just get their daily bread and the milk, for example, and then if they need to do, and then maybe once or twice a week they go to the big commercial district and buy other products that are better preservable than the bread or the milk, for example. The shop has considered to move to the commercial district too because they could have a bigger location, but they decided that there would be a lot of competition from the already existing stores there. They can better just stick to staying in this town, because if the people also would need to go to the commercial district for the regular products, then why wouldn't they buy it from another store? Besides, the other stores that moved from the town to the commercial district and didn't get built when the commercial district was there and weren't in the town before, all had a really small location on the bottom floor of a house, for example, which was just not ideal. And this Edeka has a, for in a town, relatively large place, at least large enough for what they want to sell, so they see no reason to move to the commercial district. Anyways, we will now be finishing the last couple of vlogs, so I have one more thing to say, and that is to enjoy the time lapse, and I'll be right back for the ending. I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. This is the end of the episode. We expanded a lot today. I am really happy with how the town is taking shape over the past few episodes. Next week there won't be an episode, but I'm trying to get one out for the weekend after. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, and then I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the cinematics.